For millions of Australians, it feels like the rain has barely stopped. 2022 has seen repeated inundations, crops destroyed, the loss of dozens of lives in floodwaters, and dramatic rescues. Here's one of the rain hotspots in 2022. It's Sydney, and this is the annual rainfall history at the Sydney Observatory Hill weather station in the middle of the city. We've got 165 years worth of complete or near complete data here. 80% of the time, the annual rainfall for this weather station falls in this range shaded blue. And the highest we've ever seen on each particular day, that's this line here showing the records. Until now, that is. This is 2022. We've seen several huge downpours through the year, and that has left us on track for a record wet year in Sydney. In fact, Sydney Observatory Hill's only about 300 millimetres away from breaking this high watermark that's stood since 1950. Let's go further up the Pacific Highway to northern New South Wales. We don't need to be reminded of just how destructive floods were there. Take a look at the rain in MULLUMBIMY. Again, we've never at this point in the year seen quite this much rainfall in this part of the country. I want to show you one other year in MULLUMBIMY as well. This is 1972 in yellow. It is the single wettest year MULLUMBIMY's ever seen, more than 3 metres a year through the rain. And this downfall in particular caused and led on to some pretty significant flooding in towns like Lismore. This is how the Sydney Morning Herald covered that event in October 1972. And of course, it was only about 18 months later that we saw another round of flooding in Lismore, the now infamous 1974 floods that were the worst the city had ever seen. That is, until 2022. Here's how this year's flooding looked from the sky in April. Finally, let's look to Queensland, where the story is similar. Every single one of these points is a weather station that's recorded more than double its average annual rainfall in the first half of the year. It's really covering all of southeast Queensland, also west out to places like the Scenic Rim, a part of the country that grows about a third of Australia's lettuces. It is the east coast of Australia that has copped the most rain through this year, and that is typical of La Nina weather conditions. In fact, these most populated parts of Western Australia, some of that part of the country, is actually having a drier than average year. So, what happens next? La Nina has ended for now, but the Weather Bureau says there's a 50-50 chance it'll reform in spring. There are other weather patterns that also contribute to wetter than average conditions. So, we think the second half of the year is also likely to be wetter than average. And then there's another factor making these flooding events worse and contributing to the trend we're seeing, where rain falls in big bursts at once. That is climate change.
We know that air can hold 7% more water for every degree that it warms. So that is technically also true for the atmosphere. So for every degree warming, we have 7% more water. That means we have 7% more water that can fall as rain.
The ground's sodden and the dams are full. This is WIVEN Dam in southeast Queensland. For years, it's been less than half filled, but in 2022, you can see it's overflowed twice. And now, well, the dam is basically filled to the brim. So it wouldn't necessarily take a massive downpour for us to again see some problems. The next flood, unfortunately, might not be that far away.